Chapter 2 The Valley of the Long Lake 3 days after leaving the cave, the wolf pack led the humans and their ponies through a gap in the mountains. At its deepest point, they found a spring where they ate lunch. From there, they followed a stream downhill until Brokefang stopped. "You must look at something," he told Dane. "Leave the horses by that rock. They will be safe there with the rest of the pack to guard them." Dane, with Kitten on her back in a sling, and Numa, followed him up a long tumble of rock slabs. When they came to the top, they could see for miles. Far below was the long lake. Dane noticed a village where a small river, part of the stream they had followed, met the lake. Not far offshore, linked to the village by a bridge, was an island capped by a large, well-built castle. Numa drew his spyglass from its case. Stretching it to full length, he put it to his eye and surveyed the valley. "What is that?" asked the wolf, watching him. "It's a glass in a tube," Dane replied. "It makes things that are far away seem closer." "This is Fife Denlath, without a doubt." Numa offered the spyglass to Dane. "I can't see the northern reaches of the lake from here. Is that where the damage is being done? The holes and the tree cutting?" "Most of it," Brokefang replied. "That and dens for the soldiers, like those they have at the south gate." "Soldiers at the northern and southern end of the valley?" asked Dane. "Then why not here, if they want to put watchdogs at the passes?" "Most two-leggers follow the river in and out," answered Brokefang. "Few come here as we did. When they do, usually the harriers catch them outside, as they did those riders you spoke of." Numa listened as Dane translated. "This is not good," he muttered, squinting at Dunlath Castle. "There is no reason for this faith to be heavily guarded. Under law, they are only entitled to a force of 40 men-at-arms. May I see that again?" He held out a hand, and Dane returned the glass. They continued to examine the valley until Brokefang said, "Come, we have a way to go still. Let us find the meeting place, and my mate." Dane and Numa followed the wolf back to the spot where they had left the horses. A strange wolf had joined the others, a grey and white female with a boldly marked face. Brokefang raced to meet her, tail erect and wagging gaily. "Well, he's glad to see this one," Numa remarked as they followed more slowly. "Who's the stranger?" "His mate, Frostfur, the bossed female." "Where were you?" Frostfur was demanding of Brokefang. "What took you so long? You said you were going only to the other side of the mountain, and you have been gone 4 nights." Dane sighed. She'd forgotten how much she disliked Frostfur. During her time with the pack, Rattail had been Brokefang's mate. A sweeter, gentler wolf Dane had never met. After her death, Brokefang had chosen her sister. The new female pack leader was a cross, fidgety animal who had never accepted Dane. "We were traveling with two-leggers and horses," Brokefang told his mate. "They cannot run as fast as we can." "The only two-legger you need is her. Why didn't you leave those others behind? We can hunt if we are hungry. We don't need food brought to us like the human dogs." At this, Cloud, who stood between Frostfur and the horses, laid back her ears. Kitten reared up in her sling, bracing her forepaws on Dane's shoulder, and screeched at the she-wolf. Dane was shocked to hear her friend voice something that sounded so rude. Frostfur looked at them and bared her teeth. "Enough!" the girl ordered. "We're friends. That means you, Frostfur, and these horses. If you disobey, you'll be sorry." Frostfur met her eyes, then looked away. "You are different," the wolf said. "You and the pony both. I suppose you don't even realize it. The pack never was the same after you left it. How much will you change us this time?" Brokefang nuzzled his mate. "It will be good," he told Frostfur. "You'll see. Take us to the pups. You will feel better when the pack is one again." Without reply, Frostfur ran down a trail that led north. The wolves and their guests followed. The path took them on a line that ran parallel to the lake. For a game trail it was wide and, if the tracks and marks on the trees and shrubs were to be believed, used by many animals, not only by wolves. "Mountain sheep," Dane commented, showing Numa a tuft of white fur that had caught on a bramble. "A wolverine, too. Keep an eye out for that one. They're nasty when they're crossed." Looking up the trail, she saw each of the wolves stop to lift a leg on a pile of meat. Even the females did so, which was odd. Marking territory was normally done only by males. "Graveyard hag, what are they doing?" she asked, naming one of Numar's gods. She trotted over to the head of the line. "What is this?" she asked. "What's wrong with the meat?" Brokefang replied, "One of the two-leggers is a hunter of wolves. He leaves poisoned meat on our trails. We are telling him what we think of this. When he comes to check the meat, he will curse and throw things. It is fun to watch." Dane laughed and went to explain it to Numer. They made several stops to express such opinions, twice at snares, once at a trap, and once at a pit covered with leaves and branches. Each time the wolves marked the spot with urine and dung, leaving a smelly mess for the hunter. At the last two stops, the horses and Cloud also left tokens of contempt. "That should really confuse him," Dane told Newmar and Kitten. "He'll never figure out how horses came to mark a wolf scent post." A lesser trail split from the one they walked. The wolves followed it into a cup-like valley set deep in the mountainside, hidden by tangles of rock. There the woods opened onto a clearing around a pond. At the water's edge, trails crossed and recrossed, and large flattened areas in the brush marked wolf beds. A challenge bark came from a bunch of reeds, and 5 half-grown wolves, their colors ranging from brown to frosted gray, tumbled out. They still bore remnants of soft baby fur, and were in the process of trading milk teeth for meat teeth. Eyeing the strangers, they whined and growled nervously, until the pack surrounded them and shut the newcomers off from view. Another grown wolf, a black, gray, and brown male, pranced over to say hello. "He's Longwind," Dane informed Newmar. "He was babysitting." To the wolves she said, "Say hello to my friends. Cloud, you know." As Longwind obeyed, the girl walked up to the pack. The moment the pups noticed her, they backed away. Frostfur said with grim satisfaction, "I knew bringing strangers was a mistake." Brokefang nuzzled his mate, trying to sweeten her temper. Fleetfoot stuck her nose under the belly of one of the male pups and scooted him forward. "We know this isn't what you're used to," she told him, "but you may as well learn now as later." Russet gripped a female pup by the scruff of her neck and dragged her to the girl, adding, "Dane is pack, and if she is pack, so are these others." The female was the one to walk forward, still clumsy on her feet, to sniff Dane's palm. "She is Leaper," Russet said, and Leaper wagged her tail. The male pup trotted over. "He is Chaser," commented Russet. "These others are too silly to have names." At that, the remaining 3 pups approached timidly, whining. Dane introduced the young wolves to her friends. The pups came to accept Newmar, the horses, and Cloud, but nothing could make them like the young dragon. When she went near them, they would run to hide behind an adult wolf. At last Kitten turned gray, the color that meant she was sulking, and waddled over to the pond. There she played with stones, pretending to ignore everyone. "Why is she sad?" asked Russet. "They are pups. They don't know any better." "She's no more than a pup herself," Dane replied. "I can't even talk to her as I could to her ma. She looks big, but as dragons go, she's a baby." "I see." Getting up, the red-coated wolf trotted over to the dragon and began to paw at her rocks. Soon they were playing, and Kitten's scales regained their normal gold-tinged blue color. Dane was wrestling a stick out of the jaws of a pup she had decided to call Silly when Brokefang came to say, "We hunt. Since the pups accept you and Newmar and the horses, will you guard them?" "We'll be honored to guard your pups," Dane told him. The pack left, and Newmar began to cook as Dane groomed the horses. The smell of frying bacon called the pups to the fire, their noses twitching. The new scent cancelled some of their fear of Kitten. As long as she kept to one side of the fire and they to the other, the young wolves didn't object. When the first pan of bacon was done, Newmar gave in to the pleading in 5 pairs of brown eyes and 1 pair of slit-pupiled blue, and doled it out to his audience. After Newmar, the pups, and the horses went to bed, Dane lay awake, listening to the chatter of owls and bats. At the fringe of her magic she felt immortals pass overhead. They weren't stormwings or griffins, or any of the others she had met before. She sensed she would not like these if they did meet. There was a nasty undertone to them in her mind, like the taint of old blood. The pack returned not long after the creature's presence faded in her mind. "Was it good hunting?" she asked Brokefang silently, so she wouldn't disturb Newmar. "He came to sit with her. An old and stringy elk. He gave us a good run, though," he replied. "Cloud says you were trying to fit into her skull. It sounds like an interesting thing." "I tried it once," said Dane. "Cloud thinks I might do better with wolves. I would have asked before, but I needed to rest first." "Are you rested now?" he wanted to know. "I would like you to try it with me." She smiled and said, "All right, and thank you." "Must I do anything in particular?" "No, just wait." She closed her eyes, took a breath, and let it out. Sounds pressed on her. Numerous snore, Short Snout's moan as he dreamed of rabbits, the pups chewing, Battle washing a paw. Beyond those noises she heard others belonging to the forest and air around them. She concentrated on Brokefang until she heard fleas moving in his pelt. He yawned, so close that it felt as if he yawned inside her ears. She listened for his thoughts and found them. The odor of blood from his kill, the drip of water from the trees overhead, the joy of being one with the pack. Brokefang sighed. Dane was sleepy. Her belly was overly full and rumbling as it broke the elk meat down. She could see young Silly from where she lay. He was asleep on his back with his paws in the air. She crinkled her whiskers in a silent laugh. The smells, the sounds. She'd never been so aware of them in her life. There was the wind through pine needles, singing of rocks and open sky. Below, a mole was digging. Her nostrils flared. Here was wolf musk, the perfume of her pack-mates. There was the hay and hide scent of the horses who are not prey, enticing but untouchable. A whiff of flowers, animal musk, and cotton was the girl who was pack. She looked at the girl and realized she looked at herself. It was a jolt to see her own face from the outside, one that sent her back into herself. Dane opened her eyes. "I did it!" Newmer stirred as the pack got up. "You did what?" he asked sleepily. Brokefang washed Dane's ear. She explained, "I was Brokefang. We were both in Brokefang's mind. We were wolves. I was a wolf. It was only for a few minutes, but it happened." The man sat up, hugging his knees. "Good. Next time you can do it longer." He looked at Brokefang. "Did it hurt the way it hurt Cloud?" "No," the wolf replied as Dane translated. "We will do it again." The girl yawned and nodded. At last she was sleepy. "Tomorrow," she promised, wriggling down into her bedroll. Brokefang yawned when she did. "Tomorrow," he agreed, as sleepy as she was. When she woke, it was well past dawn. Newmer crouched beside the pond with Kitten and the pack behind him, watching what he did with interest. Faint black fire, dotted with white sparks, spilled from his hand to the water surface, forming a circle there. At last he sighed. The fire vanished. "What was that?" Dane asked, dressing under the cover of her blankets. "There's an occult net over the valley," he said, grimacing as he got to his feet. "It's subtle, I doubt many would even sense it, and it serves to detect the use of magic. It also would block all messages I might send to the king, to anyone for that matter, and since this valley is hidden beneath the aura cast by the city of the gods, no one outside can even tell the net is here." "Wonderful," she said dryly. "So Dunlath is a secret within a secret." Newmer beamed at her. "Precisely. I couldn't have put it better." "And this net, will it pick up any magic?" she asked, putting her bed to rights. "Will them that set it know who you just looked at it?" "No. A scrying spell is passive, not active. It shows what exists without influencing it." "What's here that's so important?" Dane asked. "Storming patrols, 2 forts, a magical net? What is we've Dunlath got that needs so much protecting?" "We need to find out," Newmer said. "As soon as you've had breakfast, I think we should see the northern part of the valley." She ate as Newmer set the camp in order and saddled Cloud and Spots. Mangle agreed to stay with the pack after Dane convinced them, and him, that he was to be left alone. The girl then offered the carry sling to Kitten. The young dragon looked at it, then at the still nervous Mangle. She shook her head and trotted over to the pack horse, clearly choosing to stay and keep him company. With the small dragon by his feet, Mangle relaxed. Dane, who knew Kitten was well able to protect herself, relaxed as well and mounted Cloud. Brokefang, Fleetfoot, and Short Snout led the way as she and Newmer followed. The group used a trail high on the mountainside, one that was broad enough for the horses, and kept moving all morning, headed north. Dane listened hard for immortals and called a halt twice as stormwings passed overhead. "Stop," Brokefang ordered at last. "We must leave the trail here." "We will hide," Cloud told her, with Spot's agreement. "Don't worry about us." Afoot, Dane and Newmer trailed the wolves through a cut in the ground that led up into the tumbled rock. Brokefang crawled up to the edge of a cliff, Fleetfoot and Short Snout behind. The 2 humans kept low and joined them. Lying on their bellies next to their guides, they looked over the edge of the cliff. Few trees stood in the upper 10 miles of the lake's western edge. Most lay in a wood between the fort structure and the river that flowed into the north end of the lake. Much of the ground between that fort and their vantage point was heaped into mounds of dirt and rock, some of them small hills in their own right. The only greenery to speak of was patches of scraggly weed. Roads were cut into the dirt, leading down to deep pits that lay between the mounds. Men and ogres alike toiled there, dressed in loincloths and little else. Some pulled dirt-filled carts out of the pits. When they returned with empty carts, they vanished into the black, yawning holes of the mines. Wherever she looked, she saw ogres, aqua-skinned beings that varied in size from her own height to 10 or 12 feet. Their usually scraggly hair was chopped to a rough stubble that went as low as their necks and shoulders. They had pointed ears that swiveled to catch any sound, bulging eyes, and yellowing, peg-like teeth. She was no stranger to their kind, but most of her meetings with them had been fights of one sort or another. This was the first time she had seen any used as beasts of burden, or as slaves. All of them appeared to be at the mercy of the armed humans who patrolled the entire area. One ogre, a sad and skinny creature, slumped to his knees. 3 humans came after him, their whips raised. Dane looked away. On her right was the lake. Barrack-like buildings, some big enough to house ogres, had been erected of raw wood on the near shore. Between them, human and ogre children played under the watchful eye of an ogre female. The fort on the town's north side was well built and, to judge from the many tiny human figures that came and went, well manned. Boats lay at docks on the lake between town and fort, guarded by men. She closed her eyes, listening for animals. In the pit she heard only a few rats and mice. Every other animal had fled the zone of destruction, and its fringes were loud with battles fought over every bit of food. In the lake she heard death. Filth lay in the water, garbage from the town and fort, waste dirt from the mines. The fish gasped for air in the lake's northern waters. Their kinfolk in cleaner water went hungry as food sources died. Brokefang stuck his cold nose into the girl's ear. "I told you," he said. "Those are mines," Numer commented, his voice low. He unhooked his spyglass from his belt, opened it, and put it to his eye. "But what are they for? The opal mines around here were emptied nearly half a century ago." "What are opals?" Dane asked. "They are used in magic, like other gemstones. Mages will do anything to get opals, particularly black opals." Dane was puzzled. Since her arrival in Tortle, she had seen all kinds of precious stones, but not those. "What do they look like?" Numer lifted a chain that lay around his neck under his shirt. From it hung a single oval gem that shimmered with blue, green, orange, and gold fires. "Opals are power stones. Black ones like this are the best. They store magic, or you may use the stone to increase the strength of a spell. I saved for years to purchase this. Emperor Ozorn has a collar made of them, 6 rows threaded on gold wire. He has a mine somewhere, but he guards the location even more carefully than he guards his power." He glared at the mines. "Surely we would know if opal dirt was found here once more. Dunlath is a Tortland faith." "The ground shook last fall," Brokefang said. "See that raw earth on the mountains behind the fort? Cliffs fell there. In spring, when the pups were new and still blind, a mage came and exploded holes where the pits are now." "Let us speculate," Numer said when Dane finished translating. "Something of value, opal dirt, for example, or even gold, was seen in the fallen cliffs after the earthquake. The Lord of Dunlath sent for a mage with blasting expertise, doubtless a war mage, on the chance he would uncover more, and he did. It may be the same mage who destroyed the 9th Riders. But who buys what is taken from the land? It isn't the king, or he would have told us." Dane looked back at the mines. The ogre who had fallen was on his feet again, blue liquid, his blood, coursing down his back in stripes. "I don't care if they are ogres," she said quietly. "That's slavery down there, and we aren't a slave country." "It appears they are expanding, too." Numer pointed over Dane's shoulder. Here, in a direction she had not looked before, humans and ogres with axes were hard at work, cutting down trees and dragging the stumps from the ground. "Now you see why we need you," Brokefang said, baring his teeth as he watched the tree cutting. "This must stop. It will stop. Soon there will be no game, and everyone here will starve, even the ones who ordered this." "We need to learn more," Numer replied. "We need to speak with those in charge, in the Fae village and the castle. Then I want to get word to King Jonathan. Something is badly amiss." He inched back into the cover of the trees, Dane, Fleetfoot, and Shortsnout following. Realizing Brokefang had not come with them, Dane looked back. The chief wolf stood on the cliff, his fur bristling, his ears forward and his tail up as he growled defiance at the ruin below. On their return to the campsite, Dane let the others go ahead as she took her crossbow and went hunting. She was in luck, finding and bagging 2 plump rabbits soon after leaving the trail. Human friends often exclaimed to see her hunt. They seemed to think, because she shared a bond with animals, that she ought to go meatless. "That's fair daft," she had said when Princess Callison had mentioned it. "Some of my best friends are hunters. I'm a hunter. You eat what you're made to eat. I just make sure I don't use my power to bring game to me, and I stop listening for animal voices with my magic. I close it all off." "You can do that?" Callie had asked, eyes wide. "I must," Dane had replied. "Otherwise my hunting would be dirty, vile. When I go, I hunt like any other 2-legger, looking for tracks and following trails. And I'll tell you something else. I kill fast and clean so my game doesn't suffer. You know I can too. I almost never miss a shot." "I suppose if that's how you do it, it's all right," the girl had said, though she still looked puzzled. Dane had snorted. Fairer than them that kill an animal for its horns or skin so they can tack it on their wall. I had to eat, and only to eat. When she reached the camp, it was nearly dark. The pack had gone, leaving Russet, Numer, and Kitten with the pups and horses. Once Dane appeared, Russet left to hunt for himself. Numer, who had started a pot of rice, smiled when he saw her, but he looked preoccupied. From experience, she knew it did no good to talk when something was on his mind, so she let him be. Once her rabbits were clean, spitted, and cooking, she groomed the horses in Cloud, oiled rough patches in Kitten's hide, and wrestled with the pups. She ate quickly when supper was done, and cleaned up without bothering Numer. He wandered to the opposite side of the pond, where he stretched out on the ground and lay staring at the trees overhead. Russet came back, grinning. All that was left of a pheasant who had not seen him in the brush was a handful of bright feathers in his fur. He panted as Dane pulled them out, then licked her face. "Would you help me do something?" Dane asked, and explained the badger's lesson. "It sounds interesting," the young wolf answered. "What must I do?" "Nothing," the girl said. "I have to come into you." Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath and let it go. All around she heard familiar noises. Numer had gone to sleep. Cloud drowsed where she stood, dreaming of galloping along an endless plain. Kitten sorted through a collection of pebbles, muttering to herself. Dane closed out everything but Russet's sounds, his powerful lungs taking air in and letting it go, the twitch of an ear, the pulse of his heart. She drew closer and closer until his thoughts crept into her mind. On the surface were simple things like the shred of pheasant caught on a back tooth, the coolness of the packed earth under his body, his enjoyment of being with her. Below that was the powerful sense of pack that was part of any wolf, the feeling of being one with a group where everything was shared. The change from her mind to his was gradual this time. It felt as if she were water sinking into earth, becoming part of him in slow bits. When he blinked, vision came in blacks, whites, and grays, and she knew she saw through his eyes. Her ears picked up the tiniest movement, from the scratch of Kitten's claws on her pebbles to the grubbing of a mouse in the reeds. He inhaled, and a rich bouquet of odors came to her, the individual scents of everyone in the clearing, wet earth, pines, the fire, moss, traces of cooked rabbit and plants. He sniffed again and caught a whiff of scent from the trench Dane and Numer had used as a privy. The girl was amazed. She disliked that smell, and had dug the trench far away from the clearing where they ate and slept on purpose. She certainly couldn't detect it with her own nose. Not only could Russet smell it clearly, but he didn't even think the trench odor was bad. Just interesting. Silly galloped over to leap on Russet's back, and Dane was back within her own mind. "Thank you," she told Russet in a whisper. "Thank you," he replied, and trotted off to romp with the pups. She stretched, not quite comfortable yet in her skin. The change to her own senses was a letdown. As good as her ears were, they were not nearly as sharp as the wolf's, and her nose was a poor substitute for his. While she was glad not to be able to smell the trench once more, there had been plenty of good scents available to Russet. "At least I see colors," she told Kitten. "That's something." The pack returned with full bellies as she was banking the fire. They had fed on a sheep that had strayed from its flock, reducing it to little more than a handful of well-gnawed bones. Dane frowned when she heard this. "But that's one of the things to make two-leggers hunt you, when you eat their animals." "They will not find out," Brokefang said calmly. "When you ran with the pack before, you warned us about human herds. We cannot stop eating them. They are slow and soft, without hard feet or sharp horns to protect them. What we can do is hide signs of the kill. We sank what was left in a marsh, and we dragged leafy branches over the place where we killed, to hide the blood." Instead of reassuring her, his answer made her uneasy. Here was more unwolf-like behavior, a result of the pack's involvement with her. Where would it end? She couldn't even say the change was only in Brokefang because the rest of the pack helped him. She had to think of a way to protect them, or to change them back to normal beasts, before humans decided the Long Lake pack was too unusual, too dangerous, to live. That plan would have to wait. The badger's lesson had tired her again. She went to bed and dreamed of men slaughtering wolves. In the morning, Dane and Numer rode to the town of Faith Denlath, leaving the wolves behind. Reaching the village at noon, they entered the stable yard of the town's small, tidy inn. Hostlers came to take their horses. Dismounting from Cloud, Dane took the pack in which Kitten was hidden and slung it over her shoulder, then followed Numer indoors. They stood inside, blinking as their eyes adjusted from the sunny yard to the dark common room. In the back, someone was yelling, "Master Parlin, we've guests!" The innkeeper came out and bowed to Numer. "Good day to you, sir. You require service?" he asked with a brisk mountain accent. Yes, please. I'd like adjoining rooms for my student and me. Forgive me, mistress, Parlin said, bowing to Dane. I dinna see. He looked over her, then asked Numer, You said adjoining rooms, sir? Yes, Numer replied. If there's a connecting door, it must be locked. The innkeeper bowed, but his eyes were on Dane. Forgive me, sir. Locked? Dane blushed, and Numer looked down his nose at the man. People have sordid minds, Master Parlin. Despite his travel-worn clothes, he spoke like a man used to the obedience of servants. I would like my student to be spared idle gossip, if you please. Parlin bowed low. We've 2 very nice rooms, sir, overlooking the kitchen garden. Very quiet. Not that we've much excitement in these parts. Excellent. We will take hot baths as soon as you are able to manage, please. A gold coin appeared in Numer's hand and disappeared in Parlin's. At lunch, I think, after the baths, added the mage. Very good, sir, the man said. Follow me. He led the way upstairs. Kitten wriggled in the pack and chirped. Hush, Dane whispered as Parlin opened their rooms. I'll let you out in a moment. The room was a small one, but clean and neatly kept, and the bath was all Dane could hope for after weeks of river and stream bathing. The food brought by the maid was plain and good. Dane felt renewed afterward, enough so that she took a short nap. She was awakened by a scratching noise. When she opened her eyes, the dragon was picking at the lock on the door between the 2 rooms. Leave it be, Kit, Dane ordered, yawning. You've seen locks back home. The young immortal sat on her haunches, stretching so that her eye was on a level with the keyhole, and gave a soft trill. The door swung open to reveal Numer in a clean shirt and breeches. He was holding a piece of paper. Did I know she could do that? He asked with a frown. No more did I, retorted Dane. Numer glared at the dragon, who was investigating his room as thoroughly as she had her own. That door was locked for a reason, he told her sternly. To Dane he added, Though actually I do need to speak with you. We've been invited to dine tonight at the castle. Why? The girl asked, rubbing her eyes. It's typical of nobles who live out of the way. A newcomer is worth some attention. That's how they get news. I don't suppose you packed a dress. Since her arrival in Tortle, when her rider friends had introduced her to breeches, she had worn skirts rarely and always under protest. When the village seamstress showed her the only gown that would be ready in time, Dane balked. The dress was pink muslin, with lace at collar and cuffs, a lady's garment, in a color she hated. She announced she would go in breeches or not at all. Numer, usually easygoing, sometimes showed an obstinate streak to rival Cloud's. By the time their escort came, Dane wore lace-trimmed petticoats, leather shoes, and the pink dress under a wool cloak to ward off the nighttime chill. A maid had done up her stubborn curls, pinning them into a knot at the back of her neck. Kitten's mood was no better than Dane's. Told she could not go with them, the dragon turned grey and hid under the bed. The escort came after dark to guide them across the causeway to the island and its castle. Hostlers took charge of Spots and Cloud, and servants took their cloaks, all in well-trained silence. A footman led them across the entrance hall to a pair of half-open doors. Behind these doors a man was saying, No wolves like the back of my hand. I tell you, these got to be werewolves or something for the divine realms. They don't act as wolves should act. See this? And this? Laughing at me, that's what they're doing. My lord, my ladies, the footman said, breaking in, your guests are here. He bowed to Numer and Dane and ushered them in ahead of him. I present Master Numer Solomon, of course, and his student, called Dane. They were in an elegant sitting room, being looked over by its occupants. The footman announced, My Lord Belden, Master Fave Dunlath, my Lady Yolaine of Dunlath, Lord Belden's wife and heiress of Dunlath, Lady Mara of Dunlath, my lady's sister. Numer bowed. Dane attempted a curtsy. Yolaine, in her 30s, and Mara, a girl of 10, were seated by the hearth fire. Though introduced as sisters, there was little resemblance between them. Yolaine was beautiful, with ivory and rose skin, large brown eyes, a tumble of reddish-brown curls, and a soft mouth. Her crimson silk gown hugged a trim body and narrow waist. Deep falls of lace at her wrists drew the eye to long, elegant hands. Diamonds glittered around her neck and at her earlobes. Mara was painfully plain, a stocky child with straight brown hair, attired in a blue dress that fit badly. Lord Belden was of an age with his wife, a lean, bearded man who showed more interest in his wine-glass than in his guests. His brown hair and beard were clipped short. His clothing was equally businesslike, though his maroon brocade tunic and white silk shirt and hose were of the finest quality. Before the nobles stood a man in rough leather. He bristled with weapons and held a pair of wolf traps. Yolaine fanned herself, trying to disperse the aroma that came from the traps. Mara held her nose. The wolfhounds that sat or sprawled at the hunter's feet rose when they saw Dane. Slowly they went to her, their wire-haired faces eager. She offered her hands for them to sniff. "Here!" barked the hunter. "Them ain't ladies' dogs. They're fierce hunters, and not to be trusted." Dane snickered as the hunters crowded around her, tails wagging. "Yes, you're fine dogs," she whispered, returning their welcome. "You're lovely dogs, even if you do hunt wolves." "We try to hunt them," the chief of the wolfhounds said. "The man would like us to succeed, but how can we when wolves do such strange things?" Take those brutes away," commanded Yolaine. "This is a civilized gathering." The huntsman stalked out, whistling to his dogs. They followed obediently, with an apology to Dane. As they went, they brushed past another man who entered, smiling wryly. He was broad-shouldered and handsome, dressed neatly in a white shirt, brown silk tunic and hose, and polished boots. His brown blonde hair was clipped short over a clean and open face. Coming up behind Newmer, he said, "I hope you forgive my—" Newmer turned to look at him, and the stranger's jaw dropped. His hazel eyes opened wide in shock. "Maithros Minnoson Shacketh," he whispered. Dane frowned. Until now, the only one she had heard use that particular oath was Newmer himself. "Aram?" the man asked in a melodic voice. "Is that Aram Draper?" Newmer gaped at him. "Tristan Staghorn? They told me you were still in Carthage, with Ozorn."